Okay, so this is what you've all been waiting for. This is going to be part 2 of our podcast with Danny Cook, looking through his career as a youth football coach and his coaching journey. So we'll be covering a little bit more now on his time in London and what he's been doing really since moving to London in 2015 and that part of his coaching journey. So I hope you're looking forward to hearing more about that in part 2. But before we begin, just a little reminder that you can catch up on all of our previous episodes on our website, which is halftimecuppa.com, or by searching via iTunes. Just type Halftime Cuppa into your search. Thank you. And over to me and Danny now to talk about part 2 of our chat. I want to go back to your refereeing point earlier about you getting involved in it, and something that you've mentioned that's piqued my interest. Can you think of any aspects of where doing a refereeing course and being a referee has affected your coaching ability? Has it had an adverse effect? Has it maybe given you a different understanding of what a coach has to do? Or vice versa, has your coaching experience affected how you referee? Is there a feeling of understanding there that maybe abstract if the two are quite separate?
Ooh, that's, again, fantastic question. For me, there's so many transferable skills. And although they may seem quite separate, there's so many that interlinked with each other. So, I mean, the first one that I picked up, I felt I picked up during my refereeing and can display now in my coaching, certainly on match days, was you get that instinct, you get that taste. So when you're refereeing, there's, as I'm sure you know as a football fan, there's moments in games where the intensity gets a lot higher, and there's moments when it decreases. As a ref, if you're doing like a 90-minute game or an 80-minute game, I think on some weekends I would do, or some Sundays I'd do 3 games back to back. I mean, they weren't 80 minutes, they were probably more so 70 or 60 minutes. But by that third game, you were shattered. You were out for the count. There's no denying that. There's a lot of running, and you could. For me, my approach to that was I didn't want to half-ass it when it came to the positional stuff with refereeing, and a lot of refereeing is positional. From my understanding, is positional and personal relationships. So positionally, I didn't want to half-ass it. I wanted to make sure I was always on top of the action, always in a really credible position, because from a refereeing perspective, if you're in a credible position, a couple yards away, then someone down the other end of the pitch, they may question the decision, but you've got so much more credibility by standing maybe 5 yards away, 10 yards away, than if you was the other end of the pitch still in the penalty area. And that's my kind of pet hate when I see refs now from a flip side, is not so much the decision, because I feel like the decision, you got more chance of getting it right if you're a little bit closer, yeah, definitely. But I'm sure you've experienced, there's some great refs that ref from an absolute mile away, it feels like. But just being closer to the play and having that credibility, I think, is huge when it comes to reffing. So going back to that and linking it in to my point of that, you got those feelings in games, is you had two games before, you're into the second half, your final half of football on a Sunday, and you can read, or I could read or anticipate when the game was starting to boil over or not. And if it wasn't, if the tempo was down, then that is the time that as a ref you can afford yourself a little bit of luxury in terms of resting. If you need to rest, have a little bit of a breather, tone the intensity down, because obviously it's not possible to go 100% throughout the whole game. And that's something I don't expect from my players, 100% whole game. But it's then understanding that as soon as things do switch, so whether that be a decision that you may make that is actually incorrect, or a decision that you make that is correct that upsets the team, little key moments in games can change, obviously, the intensity of the game. And then all of a sudden it is now a heated game. And I don't, obviously I want to make clear I wasn't being neglectful in the sense that I wasn't just sort of had my deck chair out. I was like, for the next 5-10 minutes, I'm just going to sit here, let you guys play the game and ref
Of
the
course
game.
not. Yeah.
No, of course I was still looking for stuff, but it's the whole element of, and I guess this is the thing, until you've been out there, until you've refed, you won't really understand or appreciate those moments in a game where, whether it's the final 5 minutes or just a 5 minutes where everything can boil over and that next tackle could basically spark up a bit of a dispute between the teams. So I think that was one thing. And in the coaching sense, taking that is more, I guess, some of my substitutions have come from that instinct of knowing, okay, well, the game's kind of, it's sort of lowing out at the moment. So maybe I could do this to change the situation. I think that's a real characteristic that I picked up from, or a real quality, sorry, I picked up from reffing. And again, the other flip side of that would be the rapport. Now, I don't know about you, Rob, but when I'm coaching, the refs that stand out to me are the ones that build that rapport with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it makes sense that those who explain their actions or at least talk you through it are the ones that are probably ones that you have a little bit more respect for. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. And for anyone listening in who is a ref or has got any aspirations of being a ref, I would say the number one golden rule you should do before a game is, obviously, you get there early. You make yourself known to all the players, all the coaches. It doesn't mean you go around with a megaphone or megahorn going, I'm the ref for today's game. It means going up to the coaches, shaking their hand, taking an interest in how they're getting on this season. Then you can slip in any questions you have related to your match reports. So whether it be how many players have you got today? Obviously, for some match reports, you need that. And then just talking through, have they got a linesman? All that kind of thing, and just building that rapport with people. Certainly, coaches from a refereeing perspective will save you so many issues. It's really worth doing. And like you said, I think even if a ref explains their decision, if it's wrong, I can at least understand that they've had a thought process and there's a reason why. Now, it may be a misunderstanding of application of law, or it may be a misunderstanding full stop, or it may be a little bit subjective, but at least I've got that insight as to what that ref has seen. And that comes about, that discussion comes about off the back of really that first impression of going to meet the coach, saying hello. I think one of the things I used to say was, any problems, let me know. I think trying to break the ice between everyone, I think, does help. And certainly with the players, obviously the thing all refs should do is your equipment check. I go and chat with the players, see if they're all okay, ask them how they're getting on this season, maybe banter them about football, who they support, all that kind of thing, just to try and win a sense of respect or an understanding as to why I'm here, and I'm not just a number, or I'm not just a solid figure that they can't talk to. I'm someone that they can have discussion with, obviously in appropriate tone and in an appropriate way, but it's not just a one-way thing.
Okay, so that's good.
Sorry, one last one on that, Rob.
So keep going. I mean, the rapport and the sound of the tempo is what I've taken out of that. But if you have another snippet, please go ahead.
Thank you. On top of that rapport, a really good example, there was a Football League ref, I forget his name. He did a talk a couple years ago, and I nicked this one off of the back of that, really. When you're calling in the captains at the start of the game, what he does, and obviously it's at a higher level, but he said he also does it when he's doing a Sunday league game or whatever. He tries to get the captain's name, because by getting the captain's name and remembering the captain's name, you're already breaking down that barrier. And what I say to my captains before a game anyway is, they are them and myself, we're the third team on the pitch, really. Obviously, myself and the two linesmen, but between us, we're the team, the third team on the pitch, because I ask them, if they know any characters that are a little bit chirpy, I'm going to need your help. I don't want to have to give out yellow cards or send someone off for something that we can fix and we can work together on. So I think bringing people in and empowering, I guess, the captains as well, I think definitely helps. So yeah, really from that sense, I think a lot of the refereeing was transferable into coaching. Obviously, the application of laws and knowing the laws of the game definitely helps anyway. But
I think that's underrated, because there's so many coaches out there, particularly the defence at grassroots level, that don't know the rules. So they'll shout at something and referee. And I remember, so we worked together. There were so many opportunities where you say no, but actually it's not correct, and you explain the reason why. And if the opposition coaches will listen to you, fair enough. But having that, it's almost like having a reference point, having a referee there who's also a coach, because they understand the laws of the game better than a coach would, I think, in general. Because there's always something that we don't know, the coach or the referee will know, because that's their role. So I think it's always helpful to know just as much as the referee does, that any small area needs to be explained. I think it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And there was a game this season. I don't like criticising refs, and I don't want to, because I know I was in their shoes, and I still am, and I want to support people. So when I'm questioning a decision, it tends to be either in ref language or tends to be really calm and composed. And one of the games this year, the ref played an advantage, and he played an advantage in our defensive third. He's quite an experienced ref, so that was why I would question the decision. If it's someone I knew this ref anyway. He's a nice guy. He is a good ref, but I wanted to obviously question that decision. So he's playing an advantage, and I'm saying to him, why are you? There's no advantage there. You're playing an advantage in a red zone, or an amber going into a red zone. And what for those that don't know, what it is, very basically, so the pitch is obviously split into thirds, and what I got taught, and it may not be relevant now, but the game may have moved on, but what I got taught was you don't play, or you really shouldn't play advantages when you're in your defensive third, or if you're sort of top of, where this position was it was top of red going into amber, but amber going back into red. So it was like really on the cusp. So that was my point. Why? Because the player was facing our own goal. So he was the only direction he was going in was going back towards our goal. So my point was, what advantage have we gained from us going back towards our own goal when, I think it was a corner or something like that. There was no break. There was nothing, there was nothing on for us. So it really should have been a free kick. And Mitchell completely grilled me for that, because he found it hilarious that I was chatting. So Mitchell's my flatmate. One of my flatmates. He's a fellow coach at Kinja. And yeah, he found it hilarious that I was talking in some kind of ref language.
I get it. I think for anyone listening, I think I can maybe interpretate that is that, basically, if you want an advantage, it has to be in your own attacking third, basically. Is that right, then? There's no advantage really taken if it's
this is the thing as well. And there's a lot of grey subjectiveness to it, really. And for me, like I say, if there was a clear counter-attack on and we end up scoring, of course, I look like a muppet then. But for me, I felt there was zero. There was no, and I guess because I had that little bit of insight, that little bit of, I guess, game instinct as well, there was no advantage. We was disadvantaged by that. So that was my point. And yeah, just to clarify, obviously, as I say, the ref was a good ref, and I've not had any issues with any other refs really in terms of any dissent or disputes or anything like that. I'm very supportive. I just want to clear that up. I'm not a critical guy.
No, but within reason, you can always critique someone, especially if you know the rules yourself and an area that they may have overlooked as well. I'm sure in the coaching fraternity in our world, we always encourage to go and speak to referee at half time in a respectful manner, of course, if we dispute something, just to understand from their perspective why you did that and why they may have done that. So no harm in asking the question in a respectful and peaceful manner, I would say. Right, so let's fast forward a bit. So Waverley and Lowestoft has given you a really good grounding in your coaching world, and you've now gone off and done some refereeing as well on top of that. So if you look back to, is it 4 years ago when you moved to London? Is that correct? 2016?
I want to say 20. Yeah, it's either we was here 2016 and that was my first year at Kinja, or as in my first couple of months at Kinja, or 2015. It was one of those years. It's it feels like so long ago. I'm not gonna lie, but it goes so quick. So yeah, after at the time when I'm talking about me refereeing, I was probably in high school, and I carried on doing my reffing and coaching there. I then did a bit of coaching. We had when I was in sixth form, we had a FA mashup sort of centre for teenage girls. So I was helping with that as well. So that was really good. But really, at that point, the focus was more so on refereeing. As I said, given I was very fortunate to do a lot of cup finals, local cup finals, local youth cup finals. I did a county cup final, which was quite fun as well, and obviously refed or officiated a lot of academy games down at Ipswich. And I guess the real highlight just before I moved on was this showcase game they had at Portman Road. So for those who are unfamiliar, Portman Road is Ipswich's home ground. So I want to say it's close to like 30,000, 25,000.
Yeah, big stadium.
Yeah.
League One stadium now, isn't it?
It is. So I was selected along with a couple other officials, and I was the assistant referee for the showcase game. So at the end of their season, they would always have a showcase game against another academy for the under 16 age group to signify their rite of passage sort of through the academy. And they played Tottenham. That has to be one of my favourite officiating experiences, because I remember, I was so nervous, I'm not going to lie, between 25 to 30,000 seat a stadium, but I think the attendance was 2,000. But even that alone, like, is blooming scary.
Yeah, it's big for you.
But the real highlight had to be the warm up, and the reason I say that is because the warm up, you came out of the tunnel, you warmed up on the pitch, you had Ipswich warming up one end, Tottenham down the other end. It was a lovely, gorgeous, sunny summer's day, and it was they had music blasting out through their sound system. I remember the song Coldplay, Magic.
Oh,
song. You know what? It was one of those, like, just as we come out and you're taking it all in and you're like, oh my word. Like, it was one of those moments where your hairs are standing up because you just can't believe it. It feels so almost like surreal. And yeah, it was a really good game, really competitive game. Can't remember for the life of me who won. I think it may have been Ipswich, but we got a program. That's a good thing about reffing. If you reffed at certain levels, you got programs of games as well.
Excellent. I think that's really nice.
Yeah. And actually, I checked that one. I've got. There was a number of players from that game that went on to play in in the football league. I don't think anyone has broken into sort of Premier League really too much, but it was quite impressive really when you look back and you're like, oh, I recognise that name.
Yeah, a good opportunity for you. So was that just before then you made the move to London? Is that correct? That game?
Yeah, so that was kind of like my last hurrah, I guess, really, was those moments before sort of leaving. So I was lucky enough to do a county cup final just before I left as well, which was, say, like I reffed that one. That was a really unique experience, really tasty game as well. And I mean, at that point, yeah, I think I'd started doing men's football as well. I mean, that was like nerve-wracking in its own mind as well, men's football. But I started it before I then came up here to obviously Wembley to study a football business and media degree at UCFB. And to give a sort of short summary of my experience at uni, I really enjoyed it. I went to pretty much, I want to say 95% of guest speakers that they put on. They put on loads of guest speakers throughout the time I was there. Most notably Southgate, who was on now, England manager then as well when he did it. Harry Redknapp was one. Niall Quinn was another one. So there was a real range of guest speakers as well. It wasn't just players.
Names.
Yeah. So that was really good, and listening to their stories made it really interesting and to learn. I mean, a couple of the things they did there as well, they had additional courses you could do. These were sort of, as I say, additional stuff you do on the side of your normal course. And one of those was like, it was called Neil Doncaster's Management Games.
Oh,
and Neil, yeah, so yeah, well, it's called that because it was Neil Doncaster who ran it.
Okay, apologies.
So he's now I think the chief exec for the SPFL. He used to be Norwich chief exec as well, which made it quite interesting. He ran like a lot of additional sessions, so it'd be like a couple of presentations on his experiences, and one of the best bits was the actual crisis management stuff, which we did, which was a lot about that you were put in a situation as a club, and within your team, because you had like 4 or 5 people per team, you had to come up with press releases, how you would solve certain situations, what would be your approach. But yeah, it was really interesting, really good. And you do press conferences, and he would grill you, and it was good fun. UCFB gave me a lot of good opportunities. Did a commentary course as well, which was great. Also did some public speaking. They had an entrepreneur competition, and obviously that helped with our site as well, Halftime Cuppa.
Yeah. I think you mentioned you won that competition, didn't you? Is that correct?
Yeah, we was one of the runners up. So we got some support from them and got a nice degree, had some fantastic tutors, met some great people, obviously living with Harry and Mitchell, 2 friends from uni, and made loads and loads of good friends. But I guess that sort of first year there, I don't really remember what I was doing for the first couple months in terms of my weekends and stuff like that. But I knew after that I had to get a job. So I think it got to about October time, November time. So quite early, really. But we moved into our halls like August. So you're talking maybe 2 months down the line, 2-3 months in. I applied for a position at this sort of kid's birthday place. It's no longer here. And I saw that they had an indoor football pitch. And I thought, yeah, why not? Why not? Let's try and help there. So interviewed, got the job. And I started working there, and the team there, it was quite a small team. The team there didn't really take any interest in football, so when it came to football parties, they were all given to me. So I had all the football party, which I was like, over the moon, fantastic, brilliant. That's what I want. It was a really interesting experience. You've got to bear in mind this indoor football pitch was not big. Was really not big.
So, effective, anyone listening, I was talking about 3 or 4 meters wide and 3 or 4 meters long.
Yeah, you're probably right in terms of width. The length was probably, I want to say, like 10 meters most. It was really like short and narrow.
Okay, so very small, 3-player aside pitch maximum.
Yeah. You had to work with what you had, and they would try and do parties with like 16 people and all this kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Health and safety, I think it was straight away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I had to obviously adapt it to make sure that it was small numbers, very, very small numbers. So there was a lot of round robin tournaments going on, but that was interesting because what what you had to do with those ones was that first half, and I mean, I was given a template session to work off of. I remember receiving it. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I ended up doing my own thing. But the first half of the session, they wanted you to do a activity, which I did anyway. Like, it would be a fun game. So whether it be like King of the Ring or something like that, or a shooting exercise or a passing, it was just whatever you could do with what numbers you had and what equipment you had as well.
Match up. Well, improvisation, I can imagine.
Oh,
Yeah?
big time. And I guess the real sort of improvisation, they tried doing a sort of football course there. I was all for, actually. I didn't suggest it, but I was all for that. I thought, brilliant. I'm glad they're doing it. There was one kid, and he was like 1 year old, and you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to put something on for, I'm doing one-to-one session with a 1 year old, and it was so much fun.
Can the 1 year old even walk, really?
I mean, yeah, I maybe I'm slightly exaggerating. Maybe it was 1.5, 2. I don't know. Put it this way, kid was really, really young, ridiculously young. Like, literally, you could tell it something, and the kid would still go around knocking down the cones. So I had to try and make a game at, like scrapping everything, and we're going,
yeah,
we scrapped everything, and we'd go to what the kid enjoyed, which was kicking the cones down with the ball, or stealing the cones, or something like that. Like,
brilliant.
We really take it back. So yeah, that was kind of my experience there, and it was definitely eye-opening because of the facilities, but I guess what really ties into the next bit, I guess my main real coaching step, which sort of led me to Kinja, was just as I think I spoke with Harry, who introduced me to Kinja, and got me to come down and watch Mo, watch a couple of his sessions, and then put on like a taster session with, I think it was at the time Yule's girls, or Harry's girls. And it was around that time, I think, I met you as well. I think I met you prior to that first session. I was reffing your game. I'm sure you.
Yeah. I mean, I think we may mention this, and I kindly was invited on to do my training with you. But yeah, that was my first knowledge of you, was seeing you maybe like a fortnight before at a match, and then we spoke back into then, and I realised, oh, you're going to be coaching with us afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that must have felt weird from your perspective.
I mean, you weren't that biased, which annoyed me. I thought, surely you have us a bit, but it was cool to see a fresh face. Always good to see new coaches at the club. So yeah, quite exciting for us all.
It was around that time, the timeline's probably slightly off, but I've just been introduced to Kinja, and then I was like, how much am I going to be able to commit because of this work at this other place? And then it was like a couple months down the line, the place actually closed, shut its door. Literally, you turn up one day and it was closed, completely closed. So
very strange. Yeah, but I've been telling this business before, but for those listening, that's not a normal way of saying goodbye to a job, is it? Very unusual.
No, it was certainly unexpected, and I was like, well, okay. So that was a blessing in disguise, because that freed me up to go and pursue coaching with Kinja. So that was really sort of what needed to happen to get me into the club now, really.
Excellent. Let's get some context before I ask you just a couple of questions. So Kinja Football Club's a club based within the Wembley Park area of London, Northwest London. A grassroots football club, basically from young 2 or 3 year olds all the way up to senior level. So we have quite a strong link with UCFB, the actual university, and we've been fortunate enough to get quite a few coaches over the last couple of years through that university. One's currently our vice chairman, for example, and another couple like yourself and Mitchell are coaches within the club, as well as a few others. So for us as a club, getting the coaching team was really exciting. But what were you thinking about at that time? Because you'd done some, I would say, non-coach related stuff, as in working part-time. Were you at this point in time in London thinking, I will do my degree, get it done, and then get into full-time work? Or were you also maybe thinking in the back of your mind, maybe I can get back into refereeing again, and maybe I can get back into coaching. What were your plans in London at that time?
Say at that kids' party place, I think I was working Saturdays and then reffing on Sundays. So
right, okay.
My reffing was probably prominent at that time. But yeah, the looking back at it is quite funny, because at that time, prior to coming into Kindra, I hadn't done a formal coaching qualification at that point, so I had all that experience, but I'd had people around me who had supported, or
that's interesting.
Even that's why I'm saying I was so thankful in that respect, that I was trusted and empowered, because those around me gave me the opportunity to go and lead, and they would be the ones who would be seen as the coach, but technically it was me coaching. So yeah, it's interesting, because you go into a club, don't know anyone obviously than Harry and my mates who are just coming through, which is Mitchell and Finn, Tom, Eric at the time. Obviously met you a couple of weeks before. So yeah, I was looking forward to it. I found it strange coming into a new club, given how long and how much time and how homely Waveney was to me. But it obviously paid off. It was a great decision, and obviously still coaching there now. So I think initially I came in and assisted Mo with, I want to say at the time, the under 13 boys.
Maybe under 14, because you were with them for 1 year, weren't you? Then the following year I worked with you under 15 level, so it must be under 14 then at that age.
Yeah, so
just mentioning that. Carry on, please.
No, that's fine. So I was working with them, and I think I worked with them because this is why I'm saying it's a little bit grey. I think I came in sort of April time, so I sort of caught the trail end of a season, and then had a one full season with Mo and those boys. And yeah, it was really good. Still at that point, I didn't really consider coaching as a career, or as something that I would pursue a lot further. But I enjoyed working with Mo. Loved picking his brains. He had great insight and great sort of opinions on how the game should be played, or how someone should coach. So it was interesting to find out why he felt that way. That opportunity to sort of pluck someone's faults and methodology really helped develop me. And the group of players we had at that time were, I mean, like all the players really I've worked with and I've been lucky to work with, were fantastic, and they were really welcoming to me. Yeah, they were a really special group of players, very talented. I remember we went to a tournament and we got to a final with that group of players. What struck me about Kindra, and particularly that team, was the atmosphere and the environment. So that team was so friendly, and that's nothing to say that teams or places I'd been at before hadn't had that, but it was just such a unique spin or a unique twist. So I know Mo had a lot of team socials, and a lot of the sessions were focused around, can we do technically something really good? So it could be some skill work. One session we got the GoPros out, we'd have filming, and we had a laugh. It was a really good time with that set of boys. I guess on the contrast, during that first full season when I was with the boys, before that summer, you'll put myself and Mitchell on a level 1 course. I think Waveney helped us out as well. So I think I managed to do a course back home. I think it was part funded by both. So I was really grateful.
I was never aware of that. Okay, so you still connected with Waveney from a coaching aspect in your first year with Kindra, is that correct?
Yeah, so when I went back, this is something I haven't really touched on with Waveney as a club so far. They did holiday clubs, and their holiday clubs were legendary. They were so good. And yeah, I mean, I coached a number of holiday courses. I also did some before Waveney did them. It was a Lowestoft town one, so it's from the actual football club. They did it, and there's so many little things I picked up from that, and I enjoyed, whether it be like they had coaches versus players challenges.
Sounds fun.
as you can expect, a little bit of bias going on. Coaches always seem to win, which is quite funny because I used to go on those courses and you'd get so fueled. You'd be like, no, we're going to beat you. We're going to beat the coaches. And to go from that to like 1 or 2 years later being a coach on the course is so funny. Like seeing both is like such a unique experience. And I remember, again, I mentioned him earlier, a guy called Andy Reynolds. On our final day of a holiday camp, we would have a tournament, and it would be like throughout the day. So it would be challenges first. You'd do a lot of activities, and each activity you scored a point for your team. There'd be a running total.
Oh, and this already sounds immense.
Mate, honestly, this
like
so good.
Olympics for football.
Yeah. So it would be across all age groups. So you've got to bear in mind, I think there was like 4 groups. And then in each age group, everyone's sort of split into teams. So you had like Norwich, Ipswich, Arsenal, Man United. You had 4 or 5 teams. And it was so cool because that final day, you would have, say, all those challenges gave you points. So the younger age group, their Norwich team could be smashing it. And they could be getting so many points, but the older ones are really struggling. So it really balanced and worked really well.
Okay, that's cool. So it's across age groups per team, basically. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
The best bit, he had this massive whiteboard, huge whiteboard, right? And he designed it, put Sky Sports, and it was almost like a website or like a newspaper format.
I want to touch the detail.
Oh,
so
honestly, it was so good. And then it would be like random headlines at certain points in the day. So say if, for example, one of the teams was overall leading by quite a bit in terms of points, you would suddenly find a headline appear saying such and such from Norwich, who are top of the Premier League, has refused to do a drug test and has been fined 300 points or something like that. So it was very cleverly done in a creative way to keep it very close. And it was so good.
If my team was doing so well, and because I ran a point or two, and then I had to lose the tournament. But that's just me.
The clever bit about it wasn't like to that extent where it was like 300. It was accumulation of little things that they did and lots of clever techniques they did to keep it balanced.
Right.
The other thing they did, and I loved, was they did transfers as well. So all of a sudden you'll find, they've swapped teams. You get sudden breaking news. It's 5 million swap, and yeah, it was really funny. And I remember, they would do talent shows. Obviously, I think that's the standard for camps. You do like talent shows during lunchtime or quizzes. But I mean, doing some of those lowest off courses and having what Andy did, that was incredible. That was so much fun as a player, having played in that and then having coached in that. Incredible.
Fantastic. So much care, consideration to the players there and players involved. It sounds like you really felt, if I was involved in that people really cared. That's really, really powerful, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, just to sort of move on from where I was, I just joined Kinja, got sent into the summer to do my level 1, did my level 1, completed that, which was nice. And then went back up to London, second year at uni, and went and coached I think they were under 13 girls side. I coached them with Mitchell. Again, such a unique experience. I don't know if you managed to see any of our training sessions, Rob, or remember much around that time about that team.
I remember they were very fun and highly focused on player engagement and enjoyment from what I can recall.
Yeah, they, again, like my middle school team, they got battered. There's no denying that they got battered. But you know what was brilliant was the spirits that the girls had throughout and the fun that they had and the development that they showed as well. So I worked with that team along with Mitchell for about 2 years. That second season obviously is our crossover where you and I first started coaching together. The journey they went on and keeping them participating in sport was so much fun. And they would openly say this. They enjoyed the journeys more than the games. So they enjoyed the fact that they would travel with us because obviously London, public transport, parents couldn't necessarily take their children to games. So me and Mitchell and any other coaches, we would have to go on public transport and sort of navigate our way there. And they enjoyed that time away from the pitch, and they enjoyed the social stuff so much that stuff on the pitch they really didn't care about. Obviously they were gutted. They wanted to win games and score goals, but I think because they enjoyed it so much, they stuck around. And I was saying to Mitchell, and I'm desperate to get him on one of these podcasts because I think we achieved something special that I don't think many other coaches can achieve, in the sense that we never won a game, but we managed to get to a cup final and a semi-final. So
there's definitely stories to be told from you, Mitchell, on that one. Definitely, I'm looking forward to hearing that at some point in the future.
100%. So I will keep trying. I'll bring him on because he's got some great stories. But yeah, they were good.
I'm going to touch briefly on just, I guess, a couple of points before we finish off in relation to your time at Waverley and your time at Lowestoft and then time at Kinja. Is there anything particularly different about the three clubs and what you've learned from a coaching aspect? And is there anything particularly similar between all three as well that you notice? It's not reflecting back on your journey with all three clubs so far.
That's an interesting question. I think the difference between Waveney and Kinja for me was the scale. So Waveney was a much larger club. The catchment area for players was, I guess, there was clubs nearby, but it was not as saturated as London with Kinja, and I think that's a struggle that many London teams have around that area. In terms of coaching, not from my personal perspective, there wasn't too much difference between the two clubs. There was little things, little nuances that were quite nice, but there was nothing that I would sort of write home and say this club gave me this and this club gave me that. But what I will say is the difference in football, and I think there is a clear difference for me anyway between football in London and football back home in Lowestoft. Just given the sheer emphasis here on technical ability, the physical aspect as well. But those two, I think, are the strong sort of characteristics that you need as a player down here compared to what you need as a player back in Lowestoft, where as I mentioned earlier with my goal lifting skills, I didn't really need to do much weights or anything like that. Aside from that, they're all quite the same. I've been lucky because I've had good coaches around me and been at good clubs in good places. So.
Okay, I think that's probably one we can go back on one day to look at the socio-economic factors between what brings a player in London together or brings a player in another county like Suffolk together. Although, is it competition levels are higher in one county than the other? Is technique more perceived as important over physicality? Is the mental aspect the same? So that might be no podcast altogether, really, asking a couple of county coaches. I'm aware of time, so I just wanted to kind of finish up now with a couple of questions about the future, if I don't mind going into that with you, please, Danny.
Yeah.
It's hard to predict, I know, particularly in current climate. I don't want to timestamp our podcast, but this is amongst the coronavirus situation 2020. If anyone listens in the future. So what would you say now, being quite philosophical here, what would you say now would be your next steps or your future plans for you as a coach or as a referee? Do you see a future in this? And what are you thinking about doing next?
Yeah, again, great question. Thank you, Rob. The next steps for me, I see, obviously going off of my answer previous, I worked with you with a under 15s boys team that progressed to under 16s, then managed to guide them through to under 17s and now onto a men's team. So their journey through youth football, I think, is now done, which is great. And I'm really pleased of the characters that we, and I include obviously yourself, Luke, who also coached with me, and Coach CJ back in the day. who we managed to discover, I guess, and develop. So yeah, in that sense, I'm really pleased the fact that they've now sort of graduated into sort of men's team football. They're now ready. We've done what we can to get them to this point. For me, with Kinja, it remains, I guess, to be seen what we do next season. But I think the idea is we will be some form of adults team, which I think is needed now for those boys, for the boys that aren't quite ready to make that full transition to our first side, should we say. There may need to be a stepping stone in between. Last season, as you know, Rob, I started assisting with the men's team as well, working with Harry and Luke, Ollie and Vartan, all great people and great characters to learn off of. There's stuff there that I've picked up and I want to take into my coaching going further forward. So yeah, really, I think the focus for the future will be on coaching rather than reffing at this moment in time. That's because for me, I really enjoy working with people. I really enjoy having that discussion. I felt with reffing, you do get that. And like I say, the rapport bit at the start of the game, love that. Chatting with people throughout the game, having a bit of banter with players when you can is good. But it's not quite the same as working with people and getting them towards a common goal. So I think that's going to be my sort of pathway to follow. And one I haven't really mentioned here yet would be the American school as well. I coached there. Again, another fantastic place to coach with some really interesting characters around me and some really good kids as well. And I've had some great times there, coached in an international tournament as well, which is quite a highlight. So yeah, I've been quite lucky really. And I guess the future would be to continue my development. Someone asked me about, what should be our approach during this lockdown. And I personally believe as a person, and this isn't just as a coach, but as a person, you need to use this opportunity to develop yourself and become a better person. Because now is the time to do that. And whatever it may be, you may want to be a green grocer, you may want to be one of them, in which now is a good time to learn, do a bit of research, and develop your green grossing skills. But yeah, for me, I think post-COVID, post this situation, this horrible situation we're in, I'm looking to try and get onto a UEFA B course, hopefully pick up that license, and then longer term try and get into an academy and work my way up really. Okay. I want to work with the best players and coach at the highest level.
Fantastic. I think that's really good advice there. I'm sure most people listening will hopefully have done something themselves with this free time, self-reflect and do some training or some courses or spend some time on ourselves. But yeah, touch wood, we in our lifetimes never have a situation like this again when we're unable to work or able to be mobile and active outside. So I guess to be the best of the situation is to use this free time to help yourself. Also, as well, is just use that opportunity to improve your mind really and really explore things that are away from the day-to-day rat race, like getting on the train, getting on the bus, commuting, meetings, tasks, whatever it can be. There's some quiet time for us all now to focus on other areas. I've really enjoyed this talk so far. I'm going to finish off with one final question to you, please, Danny.
Sure.
Looking back at your coaching journey, and it's been a very long one, I didn't really realise how young you were, because you're a young man yourself right now. I won't reveal your age, but he's under the age of 25, folks. He's still a young man.
Still get ID for a lottery ticket.
Aged very, very well, folks. Aged very, very well. My question to you would be, because you had such a vast coaching journey, it has been a long one. If you could look back now and speak to that year 8, Danny returning from illness to school, going on these leadership courses and learning about becoming a coach in a very small environment at that time, but at the start of it, is there anything you know now that you would say to the younger version of yourself? What would you advise? Is there anything you'd like to feed back to that version of yourself as a young person?
I would probably emphasize the importance on building those relationships with, I think at the time as I mentioned earlier, it was with players, which was good. So it'd be developing that further, but more so with other coaches. And that was something I did a little bit of back then, but compared to now, I'm trying to pick other coaches' brains, trying to find out what they're doing, why they're doing it. Not necessarily copying it like for like, but understanding, well, what are they trying to gain by doing a certain practice, or by speaking to someone in a certain way. So I think for me, it would be more a case of that. A general sort of observation in terms of areas that I need to develop would be clarity and messaging, as you've probably seen from this 2-hour spectacle of a podcast. I like to ramble, I like to waffle, and that's something that, in the heat of the moment, in the heat of battle, people don't need that at times. They need clarity to follow. So I think that as well. And I guess really the big one that I picked up more so over the last couple of months and last year would be being bold, being brave, to just try a session, try something, and if it all goes wrong, don't matter. Just either adapt it to what you've got, or you say, okay, hands up, fair enough, that didn't work out, but next time I'm going to try and do this. So I think that adaptability and self-awareness of understanding your weaknesses and understanding what you can fix, I think is crucial to a coach. I believe anyway.
Excellent. I really like that. So we can all build our relationships with our players. We can all learn to be a bit more succinct and clear in our delivery, particularly if it's something tense. We want to get a 3-minute conversation into 1 minute. How can you get into the key points? And then we're all maybe a bit afraid of innovation or afraid of making a mistake. But sometimes the best ideas come from moving away from the script and testing yourself as a coach and as a person. So it's really good advice there. I hope young Danny appreciates that.
I think he does. I hope he's listening. He's probably turned off by this point.
He's just more 5-3-2 formations with your group.
He's heard that. He's heard the 3-5-2. He's given up. I mean, that to end on. For that complete circle to happen, where I absolutely hated playing a 3-5-2, and now that is the go-to formation I tend to do with my sides right now, is pretty something, I think. And I think you've got to be open to just trying new things and just discovering whatever knowledge is out there, really.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danny. So that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you for your time, Danny. We appreciated it. Can you tell anyone listening right now, please, how they can maybe be able to follow you on social media?
On Twitter, it's at DannyCook1996. And then, of course, you can probably see some of my content on Halftime Cuppa as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. You can also follow us on the Halftime Cuppa Twitter. Use our handle of @halftime, all as one word, _Cuppa, CUPPA. Or we can also follow me. There's not much going on with me at the moment, but you want to read my daily musings on the world of sport and other things. It's Bobby Manz, so @Bobby MANZ. If you wish to follow. And as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, you're now able to catch up with all of our content on the halftimecuppa.com website or on iTunes. All you need to do is search for the words Halftime Cuppa. So thanks again to our wonderful guest. Really pleased to have you on the show today, Danny Cook.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Well done, Rob.
Thank you, Danny. And I guess, folks, until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and goodbye.